Welcome to the Tepper School of Business Multimedia Series. For more information on the Tepper School at Carnegie Mellon, please visit us at www.tepper.cmu.edu/multimedia. And now, here's your selected video.
All right, guys. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us today. We're about to get started here. Before we do, I ask that you all open up your soda cans and potato chips, and please put away your cell phones before we get going here. All right, thank you. Today, we're very pleased to bring you two speakers here for the James R. Schwartz Entrepreneurial Leadership Series, as well as the W.L. Mellon Speaker Series. It's a little bit of a different format than what we've seen here this year. It's more of a fireside chat. So before Jeff Mattea here introduces the speaker of the hour, I'm first going to introduce the gentleman, Mr. Michael Green, who will be leading this chat with us today. Mr. Green is from the West Virginia area, and he's led a very distinguished career in the technology industry. He started out at the National Security Agency and then moved on to the private sector. Two of the more notable companies he worked with was Four Systems as well as LoudCloud, and both of those were acquired in multi-billion-dollar deals. We're hopeful that your current venture, Pittsburgh-based company, will be just as successful. And if it is, I hope you remember us here at Tepper. I say that because Mike's been very visible in the communities that he's a part of. He's currently serving on the boards of the West Virginia University Research Council Foundation, as well as the West Virginia High Technology Foundation, as well as here at Innovation Works here in Pittsburgh. And just 2 years ago, he was also named to be on the board of the West Virginia Education Board. So he's certainly a great person to be welcoming here today, so please join me as we welcome Mike Green.
So again, thank you all for coming. I wanted to take the great pleasure to introduce Mr. Ray Lane. Ray Lane is really a legend in the Silicon Valley community. He joined Oracle in 1992, and over the course of 8 years, he became president and COO and grew it from a $1 billion company in revenue to about $10 billion in revenue. He left in 2000, joined Kleiner Perkins, working as a venture capitalist. He's still there as a managing partner, working in clean tech and enterprise software solutions. And he has recently, as in November, taken the chair position of the board at Hewlett-Packard. But really, most impressive, I think, is his dedication to this community and coming back and working with us. As someone from this area, he grew up in Newton Township, very close to Pittsburgh. And he has really been involved in Carnegie Mellon. He's the chair of the board of trustees here at CMU. He was instrumental in starting the CMU Silicon Valley campus. He's been an advisor to the School of Computer Science and really loves to come and really interact with us, and he's been a tremendous resource to us, the community. So he's also a phenomenal storyteller, and we really look forward to hearing him today. So with that, I'll yield the floor, and please join me in welcoming Ray Lane.
I guess we'll get started here. I think the other thing that they didn't mention, Ray and his wife Stephanie are certainly also involved in a lot of philanthropic and charitable things, including the Special Olympics. Which brings me to my first question. With all these things going on in your life, with Kleiner Perkins, with all the other things you're doing, including this job at, what's it called, Hewlett-Packard? My first question is for you, Ray, and I'm sure most of these people are looking at you and say, are you crazy? You know, the answer would be yes. When I first heard about Ray taking the job at HP, I called up a personal friend of mine, and it was actually a mutual friend of both Ray and I said, did you hear about Ray? And I mean, silence at the other side of the phone. Did you hurt? Did he get in an accident? Don't tell me he's really sick. He's dying? You're getting closer. Because the schedule this man has is just unbelievable. In fact, it's so difficult that we were trying to get a little conference call together. Art, Bonnie, and I, last couple of weeks ago, to talk about this conference, and we first get the admins together. And you know, most of you, when you set up a meeting with somebody, it's like, well, should it be at like 10 o'clock or 10:15 or 10:30? With Ray and his admin, He's the only person I know, and I'm not lying about this. You know, after a basketball game, at the end of the game, when they have that clock that goes from the last minute, they start breaking down into fractions of seconds. He's the only person I know on this planet, on his calendar, actually has an app that breaks it down into fractions of seconds. So we set this meeting up, I think it was from 3:09 to 3:13. So
we stayed within the schedule.
And we did, because we had another meeting starting at 3:10. You know? So we'll get on with the more interesting things here, right? So let's start with your first day job. Let's talk about Kleiner Perkins. For those of you who don't know who Kleiner Perkins is, you can probably reach to your smartphone now and Google him, which in itself is ironic, because had it not been for Kleiner Perkins, it wouldn't get Google. But you can figure that out later. But let's start with Kleiner Perkins. You've been involved with him for a number of years, and your focus has been lately primarily on clean tech and green projects. I think most of the audience here understands the social reasons for that. That's fairly obvious. But I think we'd be more interested in knowing what's really hot in that space. And what's the business reasons for that, too? I assume that your LPs are probably more, as much interested in the environment, but they're also interested in ROI. So could you tell us what's hot there and what's going on?
So I'm kind of a strange duck to be in this area. I lead our clean tech practice at Kleiner, and the reason I do it because I've developed a passion for it. It wasn't hard to dislike enterprise software, what I really did in the middle part of this decade. There was nothing going on. It was all consolidating, not many new ideas. There were a few things. I took around a concept in the industry called the personalized enterprise and really tried to drum up entrepreneurs to develop things like social networking in the enterprise, or to make it much more of an organic institution and really understand the assets it had in its people. And things like that, a database concept and all that. And it just was, quite frankly, boring me to tears. And so we decided in 2005, when it looked like there was a perfect storm developing between the concern over carbon emissions. So Al Gore was on the road doing his thing. The movie came out, the book came out, and all that. And so there was this growing concern over the planet warming. Secondly, there was a concern over our energy independence, and we could no longer price our transportation fuels. And there was a lot going on in technology that we could have gone on ignoring, but in this field, there's a lot developed in the basic sciences that allow you to do some things we could not do the last time we had an energy crisis back in the 70s. And so I got pretty interested in this, and I said, this is something I kind of spring out of bed in the morning and say, I want to learn something new. I can go back to an enterprise software company or any technology company, and it feels like riding a bike. I just can sit and talk and assess a company and all that. And I said, but I want to be challenged. I want to feel like I'm 30 years old, and I want to be on the edge. And I feel every time I'm sitting with a team in clean tech, I feel like I know half what I should know. And I love that feeling. I just love it. So I started thinking about it a little bit, doing some of the early projects, and then I finally said to the firm, I was the first one that said, I want to dedicate my time to this. So 100% of my time at Kleiner Perkins, I want to be focused on clean tech. And then we started later developing practice areas, clean tech, digital, and life sciences. And so I said, I believe every partner needs to dedicate themselves somewhat. It doesn't make sense if we're going to develop companies of high impact that are going to try to dislodge some of the existing infrastructure in the fossil fuel space, that we're going to do it part-time. But I'm going to be a digital investor, and oh, by the way, I'll invest here and invest there. And you really have to understand this. This takes a lot of time to understand, some of the basic sciences. If you're going to convert waste heat into electricity, or you're going to convert, develop biofuels from enzymatic processes or bugs that will eat sugar and create fuels, or you're going to create a new battery. This requires a lot of work. And so I said, so that's what I've been doing for the last 5 years. And And so I think some of the, your question, this is, I always get this problem, I forget what the question was.
What are some of the companies you're looking at? And what specific industries you're
So we went through the early stage of looking at the natural suspects. And I'd say 5 years ago, we were looking at biofuels companies, solar, wind. We went heavy into solar, we were light on biofuels, because we couldn't understand how the economics would work out on producing biofuels. You still had most of the sugar production outside of the United States. Sugar has an import tax on it. Fuels production, you have to pay a refining subsidy, and I mean, the economics still aren't there at biofuels. So we did a few. We went heavy in solar. We thought solar would be a big deal. Solar went through a boom and bust period. And it's a bust not because it doesn't work, and it's actually starting to work at parity. So unsubsidized, you can start to get, not in Pittsburgh, but in California, you can start getting electricity costs generated by solar at about the cost that you can from natural gas or coal. But the world built a lot of capacity, and so there's much more capacity this year in 2011 than there is supply. We'll start to see that come into synchronization next year, and we'll start to see the solar market become very. Wind market is a great market. Solar market will be a great market, and so those were the early projects. Then we started moving on to other things like storage, batteries, and I think storage is the holy grail for if you can add cheap storage to renewables like solar and wind, or put storage into the grid so you can manage off-peak. Storage gives you so much flexibility in the way you manage energy, and then take it to transportation. Okay, so batteries obviously become important in electric vehicles, plug-in hybrids. So I started focusing on batteries, and the best battery project I could find was right here. I didn't find it. It was happening so far down Pradeep, who's the dean of the College of Engineering, or didn't know about it. An untenured professor working on a project to produce low-cost batteries for grid replacement. So it had to go into what had heretofore been a nickel metal hydride or lead acid market, very cheap but very kind of high maintenance, toxic environment. So developed a non-toxic, low cost battery. You could basically disassemble the battery and eat the battery. No toxicity at all. It lasts forever, 5,000 cycles, and is at the same cost as lead acid. Wow. And so we funded it earlier than we normally. I just had a conversation with many of you about when venture capital is right, and we kind of went into this company earlier than we normally would. It didn't have any seed capital. We provided the seed capital. One of my partners, a junior partner who is on the East Coast, who just does nothing but lab crawling. He just spends his entire life lab crawling and trying to find. He found a project. Called me and he says, I think I found something in your backyard. And so we funded it. And another company I'm chairman of the board of. My wife says, you're trying to become chairman of the board of every company on the planet. But it's a great project. It's going to be a great success story out of Carnegie Mellon. And the company is here in Pittsburgh.
Well, our energy policy is obviously a very important one, not only for financial reasons, but there's a lot of issues, and it's kind of a double-edged sword. If you look at this particular area where we're sitting on top of this Marcellus shale, there's still a lot of coal in this area. How do you rectify the two situations? You have to have a clean tech solution where you have all this stuff in the ground and all these issues associated with protecting the environment as well as reaping the benefits of this energy. How do we pull it all together?
Yeah, I think it doesn't have anything to do with the United States. We are much too myopic in thinking about the energy problem. We could just simply, if we had a commitment, if we had any leadership in Washington at all, we just kind of say, okay, let's look at solar and wind and all that stuff as a 10-year story. Electric vehicles, And let's do all the research we need, all the project development we need, figure out how to fund it, how much government funding to use, but it's not going to change anything for 10 years. And then immediately switch to natural gas. Take all the coal plants and switch them to natural gas. Or somebody comes up with a way to sequester carbon post-combustion, or even pre-combustion, but probably post-combustion. You cannot, when I see the coal industry advertising clean energy or clean coal, there's no such thing. You have to get rid of the carbon somewhere. So you have to deal with it. Natural gas is half the carbon. And so the natural gas, the fact that the United States has a lot of natural gas is kind of like, a message from God. And God said, well, I'm going to give you a pass. I'm going to give you a 10-year pass. Why don't you just use all the natural gas I gave you? Just use it all up while you are, and also while you're using it, put that money into renewables. Okay? No one has figured that out. Why? Because we don't have any leaders in Washington. Nobody has kind of figured out the grand plan. We do not have an energy policy in the United States of America. There is no energy policy. As my partner Al Gore says, it is to basically use funds from China to buy oil from the Middle East so we can burn it here. That's our policy. We need a plan, a policy that basically works over a 10 or 20 year period. Then after we have the energy policy, we need a climate policy. Climate's different. Okay, so are we going to cap the use of fossil fuel energy? It's a controversial thing. Europe does it. Let me tell you, Europe is so far ahead of us we can't even see them anymore. So every car gets a rating. You can only, this car is so much CO2 equivalent, grams of CO2 equivalent per kilometer. And cities are, they have a cap and trade system. You could argue against any of these methodologies. They have them all. Okay? Now, to really make it embarrassing, China has better policies than we do. Their carbon emission policy from vehicles today is more strict than ours. So they have to have better, their vehicles have to have better mileage than our vehicles in the United States. But how could that be? And then you look at the policy, you look at the goals they've set. Now it's easier for them, by the way. The central party can set goals pretty easily. But they've decided to set goals. They can also not set goals pretty easily when there are demands from the public to do that. They've set goals and said 2020, we will abate this much CO2 and we'll do it by, these kinds of projects. Wind, solar, natural gas, they're doing everything. What that's doing is also making them a great innovation market. So they're innovating. They will. It's not. And when people talk about India, they say, well, they're great implementation in the computer field. They're great at implementing things. But you don't see a lot of innovation coming out of India. China's going to be different. We're going to see innovation in these new clean tech fields, which will put jobs. There's already many more jobs in clean tech in China than there are here. So this is a societal problem that we have, and we own the development of the computer industry. Like we're lucky enough to grow up in this industry, and we've had the wind in our back for 30 years. It was hard. You could screw up. It was hard. It's hard to screw up. We screwed up. But you can pick a kind of. Doesn't matter if I pick IBM or I pick it was a good industry to grow up in. Energy will be that kind of field, and we really need to own it in the U.S. We need to. This is going to be. We will see in the next 30 years a turnover in the energy use. Now, why should we care? It's not just the environment, not just the economy, not just the energy independence. It's because of the internet. Why is it because of the internet? Let me just challenge you. Why is it because of the internet?
Because the amount of information that we're exchanging takes up a lot of electricity and energy demands.
It's a good credit. Only 2% though. Only about 2% of energy goes to data centers. Say it goes to 5%. Good guess. No, it's because in many societies, we're the one growing the fastest in emerging worlds, emerging countries. They've been in the dark as to what a better life looks like. Okay, so they never knew. This is the way my parents grew up. This is the way I'll grow up. The internet has exposed a better lifestyle to 1 billion more people. Those people, when they get a better lifestyle, guess what? It's energy intensive. So there is not enough we can do in the United States to offset the energy demands that they're going to place on this planet. So for every electric car we put in the road, the Chinese will put 10,000 into the Tata Nano in India. You know, great idea to sell cars for $2,500 a piece. Well, guess what? Every one of them has an internal combustion engine in it that is really dirty. Okay, and so everybody has a bicycle, being environmentally friendly, can now afford a car. So there's 1.1 billion people there. You know, probably half of them are going to sometime move into being able to buy a car like this. So it's hard to offset those kinds of problems. We need the world to basically recognize that this planet cannot support another 1 billion people living our lifestyle. If you look at us on a per capita basis, U.S. citizens, we are off the chart in terms of our energy usage. China, overall, just surpassed us in use of energy. So they use more energy than we do, just barely. But they also have like 700 or 800 million more people. You bring it down to a per person basis, and they're, you know, no one's even close to Americans. We are sloppy, and this is your problem. Okay? I just told some folks upstairs, I said, you know, when they tell the fastest way to change things would be for us to just change our behavior. We would give the Middle East a nightmare if we just dropped our energy usage 10%. It would be temporal. We could do that by changing our lifestyles. Probably not. Mike and I probably aren't. You should see Mike's house.
Don't go on Google Earth today.
It's a nice house.
Next topic.
You know, but I imagine it takes a little energy to run it.
Thank you.
I've got a few houses myself. My justification is when I drive my Porsche to work every day, that I only drive 2 miles to work and 2 miles back. So why isn't that as good as a Prius driving 30 miles? You know, you're growing up in a world that just demands it to be different. And good for you. You need to demand it to be different.
Well, the problem is they're going to have the problem because you and I have been long gone. That's the issue here, is that our generation messed things up pretty well. And it's going to be up to this next generation.
Well, we didn't know.
Smart people.
We didn't know. We didn't. I can't really blame us. We didn't know. But even if we froze things today, we'd be fine. We'd be okay. Maybe step back a little bit. But we're probably around 500 parts per million, something like that, of CO2 in the atmosphere today. The CO2 I put up there by driving my 1968 Chevy around when I was in school is still there. It's still in the atmosphere. We just can't put any more up there. And so when imagine what we didn't know about the environment growing up. Imagine what 300 million Chinese don't know and don't care about. Sorry, I want a full kitchen. I want a television. I want heating and air conditioning. I don't want to have to, depend on what I've done in the past. And I want a car. So that's the challenge, is to make sure we are adopting new systems. So that was question number one.
Yeah, well, let's follow up. We're never going to get to number 17, I can tell you. Let's talk. You mentioned the Chinese and their ability to innovate, which I think should be a surprise to many. Surprise to me. We don't normally think of them as being innovative. That's frightening, because we want the innovation. We expect innovation to occur in the States, in places like this, where a lot of it occurs. That whole globalization concept should be very concerning to the U.S. What are your thoughts on that? And how do we really? How are we going to compete? Because now this giant has woken up and is now saying, wait a minute, not only are we a huge consumer, we're going to start driving innovation as well.
Given the current kind of course and speed, we can't. So I hate to be a pessimist, but it's just not, they're moving so fast, and they're kind of unfettered at the pace they're moving. You know, if you had Steve Jobs here and asked him, you know, successful launch with the iPad, and you ask him, somebody did, so I'm going to tell you a real story. Somebody asked him, so why don't you create U.S. jobs? It's such a wonderful business. Why don't you build a factory in the U.S.? He says, well, you may think it's salary, it's compensation. It's not that at all. Yes, there is some difference in compensation, but I could find a place in the U.S. where I'd have labor hour compensation would be basically the same. The problem is the regulatory environment. To get a plant permitted is a total disconnect. It's a non sequitur with the market I'm developing. So I knew I could make the iPad successful, but I had to do it very, very fast. In China, we built the first floor, moved people in, and we're building iPads in the factory while the second floor was still being constructed. Okay? And Arnold Schwarzenegger told me one time he was going over for the Special Olympics Games, and they were telling him for the real Olympic Games in 2008 that they were going to have an automated transit system put in place that they hadn't even planned yet. 3 years. And he said in California it would take 8 years. And so that is the number one problem, is how fast can we move. I have a company called Great Point Energy that turns, this should be, U.S. technology should never be given to anyone outside the U.S. until the U.S. owns it. But it converts coal into natural gas. So in one catalytic gasification step, produces natural gas from coal. What a wonderful use for coal. And right now, because of the lack of permitting, the lack of support, financial support, they are in China, Korea, and India selling their technology, getting wide open reception. So it is a real problem that the bozos in Washington have to figure out. I think we're leaderless in Washington right now. I think somebody has to put together an energy plan and get it through. Why we spent 2 years getting a healthcare plan, but I'm getting into politics now.
It'd be a lot of fun to talk about, and I would certainly fuel your fire and help you do that. But this whole issue is a serious issue. We'll get off energy in a second, but let me just ask you this. We're sitting here in this community on coal and natural gas. So you're saying we can build cars that run on natural gas.
Right.
Somebody said to me the other day, and it sounds awkward to say this, we really are in the new Middle East, right here. Western Pennsylvania, West Virginia, up into New York with the Marcellus Shale, the ability to tap into natural gas. Enough to fuel, if you will, this country for decades. Is it really policy? You and I are probably the only ones here who remember the 70s.
Really policy.
Gas lines.
It's really policy, let me tell you.
Okay.
So you can each of you take your cars out today and have them converted for about $1,500 to natural gas. Do it today. Okay? And then you can probably, I think you can buy a home fueling station, which basically does the compression. Because your natural gas in your house is running at about 20 psi, and you need to compress it to 3,000 or more than that, whatever it is. So you need a compressor, and that'll cost you about $2,500 to $3,000. So, or you can go to some station that dispenses natural gas. You can find that sometimes in the community. But you do need, I think, home dispensing is probably the answer. So, $1,500, $2,500, for $4,000 to $5,000, you can convert your car to natural gas. The person that converts your car needs to get a permit that costs $50,000 to convert your car. So nobody's going in that business.
I hope we can solve that problem. Because like I said, we grew up in the 70s, and many of you way too young to remember. We were on gas lines, and we said, well, we're going to have a policy. You know, when JFK said we're going to get somebody to move by 1969, we called that the Sputnik movement, the moment we had to change things. We needed a policy then. Here it is, 40 years later, same thing.
Yeah, what we had then was kind of impending doom.
Yeah.
We had this standoff with the Soviets, and if the Soviets were going to basically get something in in the air faster than us, the next step would be to drop bombs on us. I mean, so that was impending doom. It wasn't about going to the moon. It was about getting that strategic advantage in space. And so that's not really here right now. People don't think about how they use energy every day and why it is a strategic issue. And now, gasoline, we're $8 a gallon. We start thinking about it.
Let's talk a little more about technology, because there's a lot of things that we could, in such a short period of time, to talk about. Have we come full circle? I remember you gave a lecture years ago. You talked about enterprise software, for example, and why it was dying. But now we've come to a new revolution with cloud computing, and all the things associated with that, with data centers in the sky, and all the things like, we now have acronyms like software as a service and platform as a service, and now there's a new one called data as a service. Right. So the need for computers, as we knew it, when you and I were strapping around card decks and paper tape, none of these people know what we're talking about.
I don't know what you're talking about.
We evolved to a point where we eventually got to a thing called a CRT screen, connect via wire to a computer, right? And we thought it was
Remember that? Oh.
Have we come full circle? Are we?
No, not at all. I don't see that. No. I can see how that analog and metaphor could actually shape up, where you say, okay, now we went to. Actually, you could paint a picture that moving to a Windows PC was kind of the abnormal. That we basically put a data center in front of every human being by putting it on the desk. So you've got 3 million lines of code to manage in Windows, and you've got all this software you never use. You change anything on that PC, and something else goes wrong, and that was probably not but we did it, and it certainly opened up the computing environment. It was wonderful. It was 90% adoption. It was, so we went through that. So where the metaphor holds up is, are we going back to a dumb client? That all we have to do is access the internet. Without the internet, without having the intelligence in the internet, without having the intelligent backends, which we didn't have any of those in those days, okay, we wouldn't be able to do that. So I think we had to go through that step. So now linking a dumb device, if there is such a thing. So there's nothing like a 3270, which is that CRT he's talking about. The 3270 or some other dumb terminal device had zero intelligence in it. Even your smartphone would have, I think it'd be a million times more intelligence, and it's like a prick. So you have all that intelligence to be able to manage it. I think you need that. The irony is, to produce simplicity, you need complexity. It's just you have to hide the complexity. What Bill Gates did was put the complexity in front of us. Okay, we ate the dog food. Okay, and because we wanted personal computing so badly. I shouldn't say just Bill. I mean, Steve Jobs did it as well. But we brought it out. Now I think we've gone full circle in that these smart devices, let them manage the UI. Okay, let them manage how I access data, manage video, manage rich text, manage a lot of things, so I can have a great UI experience. Maybe take it and just insert it in my car, bring it out, play music on it. I've got a lot of UI intelligence in that device. But when I want to access the world, whether it's corporate data or I want to, or it's social networking or whatever, then I can use the back end. Cloud computing basically takes those resource decisions away from the user. So it's like taking a PC away from a user. Let's take the decision of, did it really ever matter? Back in the 90s when I was fighting Sybase over the relational database business, or Informix, or I was fighting SAP in the applications business. At the end of the day, did it really matter? Did it really matter? Yes, in some countries you got better functionality with SAP. At the end of the day, this is accounting software. It's CRM software or supply chain software. It isn't like we're reinventing the light bulb. It was just software. But what did change was the technology underneath. So while SAP had a client-server application before Oracle, we had an internet application before them. So we were selling the advantages of the technology all the time. Customers would look at us and say, I have no idea what you're talking about. Is it going to let me close my books faster? Is it going to allow me to get more business? Is it going to allow me to do my supply chain better? It was very difficult for them to tell the differences. Now, move it all in the cloud. So, and the utilization goes way up. Most data centers today in a corporation are utilized less than 20%. I mean, you spend all this money on expensive gear to use it less than 20% of the time. In a cloud environment, the utilization is like 70%. So what you do, and you have very sophisticated software that knows, I've got an application and I'm going to give it just enough resource when it needs it. But I'm not going to let the resources lock up. Take the CPU, take the storage, take the network, and lock it up to this application until the application tells me, okay, I'm done. So it reverses the table on the application and allows, and just feeds that application as it needs it. And we got plenty of computing power. Servers are so cheap, storage is so cheap, that we just keep loading in power. It is energy intensive, but we keep loading in compute power and networking power and storage power such that you can put it all in the cloud. And so if you use, I mean, the most famous, I think, cloud computing example is Salesforce.com today. I mean, I don't know why you'd buy a CRM product, license it, install it. You know, here I am, chairman of Hewlett Packard. I asked, what does a chairman get to do? What does a chairman get to do? And I wanted to know. Well, I get one important job. I get to fire the CEO. I'm the only one in the person that can fire Jerry Cohen. Okay? And so that's an important job. But the other thing is, you know, I wanted HP uses Oracle CRM. So I said, why don't we just throw it out and use Salesforce? And I get 1,000 reasons why. Oh, we couldn't do that. We depend on this, do that, all BS. Just all BS. You know. So it is. I think it is absolutely a big mega trend in computing. It will occur. I think we'll see more and more companies develop. It does give it a little bit of a, going back to kind of entrepreneurs and developing companies on a SaaS model. The amount of capital you have to raise in a SaaS model, a cloud computer, is greater because what I should say is it's more upfront. Because when you open business for the first customer, you want the quality to be just. When I sell a piece of software, you know, it's not perfect. Everybody knows that. And you learn from your customers. You know, Microsoft does this, Oracle does it, SAP does it. By release 3, it's getting to be pretty good. I can't do that myself because they can leave me. When I sell them a license, they can't leave me. They want me to win. They want me to fix the problem. They get mad at me, but they can't leave me because they already paid for a perpetual license. On a software as a service model, they just say, I'm out of here. Done. And so you have to do, and raising that money early is more difficult in the SaaS model.
Change the subject real quick because we're going to run out of time. I want to leave a couple of minutes for some questions here. But
how much time do we have?
We have about 10 minutes and 22 after this crowd runs to the next class.
So
you want to just
think about, yeah, if there's any, go ahead and you ask the question, but let's just say, next question comes out.
I'll prime the pump here a little bit because I think it's the question you're always going to get for this type of an audience in this particular setting here. This university has been the leader in commercialization and entrepreneurship for years, far superior than many of the others.
Why do you say commercialization?
Because I think that's part of the, well, here we go. Because, because I think that should be the purpose of some of the development.
I agree, but why do you think Carnegie Mellon is a leader?
I think, well, because I look at the way they match up against some of the other universities that I see. Certainly they're a lot better than some of the other ones you and I know very well. But I'd like to see that grow even more. Yeah. And that's the whole purpose of the question. There's a bunch of folks out there with ideas. Budding entrepreneurs. Right. And the question that you and I get, what, every day? You probably get it every day. I get it maybe once a week. Somebody will come to me and say, I've got this great idea. What do I do? Really what they're saying is, got any money you don't need? They're really nice. They very rarely ask for the adult supervision first. They ask for the money first. What's your advice, Leo?
So,
how do we get started? How do we do
in 10 years in venture capital, I've only heard one bad idea. Okay, so ideas are cheap. Start with that. Secondly, if you're an entrepreneur, you'll find a way to fund your idea. And it's not venture capital to start out with. You need angels to believe in you. You need somebody to reach in their wallet and say, I'm going to let you get this to a point where you can go talk to a venture capital firm or anybody else that has money, and you can convince them that if they gave you serious money, $5, $10, $15 million, that you could remove all the risk, or remove at least the technical risk of your idea, if it's a technical idea. So you have to get it, be in a really, really big market. So the bigger the market, the better. So venture capitalists want to see big markets. They don't want to be constrained because we can't change the market. We can change the management team. We can supply it with more money. We can even kind of keep working the technology till it works, or use it for something else. The market, you can't change. If you're in a small market, you're in a small market. You don't want to be in a position where you have to take 30% of the market to be successful. You want the smallest percentage you can get to make you successful. So can you build a $100 million company by taking less than 1% of the market? That's a big market. And so all of those things have to be in place. Then you convince a couple of angels. And probably those angels are somebody that has it's probably said something in the press, or they've kind of made a speech and said, I really wish the world would do the following. I wish we could do this. Or you just plain have a good idea and you can sell it. But again, good ideas. Man, we talked about how many ideas upstairs that just kind of flowed out in the introduction. Did you hear a bad one? I didn't hear a bad one. They're all good ideas. I don't know if any of them could be venture funded. I have no idea. And venture capital is an area. It's an expensive way to get money. You're going to give up a lot of your idea, a lot of your company and ownership. It's an expensive way to do it. So you have to be sure you get the right. Go there for the right reason. If you're going to venture capital for money, you're going for the wrong reason. You want to go for help. You want to go for influence. You want to go for somebody that can help you build a company.
Well, it's an ecosystem that has to be developed, and we've done a fairly good job here in the Pittsburgh area. Certainly, we're trying to do that in West Virginia as well. There are angels out there. There are organizations like Innovation Works that can help you. The state does supply some money, although we've got our budget cuts like everybody else. But continue to work on your ideas.
I think this Innovation Works idea is great. I ran into the president of
Chairman last night on the flight.
The chairman, yeah, last night on the flight.
Together.
Right, he's on our board. He's on our board. He's on our board. Yeah.
So Ron Bianchini is certainly well known here at CMU.
Yeah.
Before we run out of time, let's see if we get any questions out of the audience here. We have been told exactly 7 minutes. We had 17,000 more questions, but we'll open it up to you all and see if anybody has any questions. Anyone? Yes.
Good afternoon, Ian Buggs, second year MBA. Working currently on, as you're talking about clean tech and energy, to bring it back to that question. A lot of us are talking about sustainability and those types of issues. As we talk about the national energy policy and what Americans can truly do, as you mentioned, this 10-year horizon, is that feasible in terms of getting off of the non-renewables and switching to the renewables, such as solar? Wind is a very big problem because of the storage issue. How do we get there?
So I think it's go through, and I thought this 5 years ago. I funded 2 natural gas companies when natural gas prices were high, challenging with them low. The other, I told you about the one company, the gasification company. The other is a biogenic company that feeds nutrients to enzymes that in a gas well are eating the coal. So in an anaerobic environment, which coal is in all the time, started with oxygen, it has bugs kind of creating hydrocarbons down there. So we punch a hole in the ground and we get the hydrocarbons out. Why not create the hydrocarbons by recreating that environment? So that's what we do. So I think natural gas, to me, has always been the bridge to how we get there. And so we need a natural gas policy. 2 years ago, natural gas was not considered, in fact, may still not be considered officially a renewable, or is not a renewable, but is not viewed as, it's viewed as a bad fossil fuel. So a DOE does not have programs for funding natural gas projects. So this Great Point Energy went to China, Korea, because there is no funding. I can get electric car funded, which I did. Fisker Automotive just went to production. I'm building electric cars. I can't save the planet with electric cars. It'll be a long, long time. You will be my age, okay? And so his age. But you could by using natural gas. Okay, so I think that's the route, and that gives us the time to really get solar, wind, other renewables. I mean, obviously nuclear, you may have a political position on nuclear, but you take nuclear out of the equation, which we've done in the U.S. for the last 20 years, and if you say we're not going to do this for another 20 years, that's a big, big part. France, it's 70% of their energy, and Japan, it was 20% of their, 30% of their energy. So you take nuclear and say we're not going to build nuclear plants. That's crazy.
I guess we have time for maybe one more question. Yes, sir.
So you pump us all up here with all this competition in the energy industry, this lack of leadership in Washington. By the way, I'm from Barcelona. My name is Tony. But the question is here, we have all these talents and smart people going to the workforce very soon after the MBA. And we get into this first kind of jobs, but we want to fix the wall. Right? Mm. So what would be your best advice to get our careers jump-started? That's a difficult question.
No, it's a really, really good question because it's a personal question. So, it's, some entrepreneur graduates, and when people come out of, and really want to focus on being an entrepreneur, and I think you can do that by starting a company, being a co-founder, joining an existing company that's young, and you want to accelerate it, or even joining a big company where there's not much, you'll be frustrated, but maybe you can produce some kind of a, at HP right now, we're trying to protect, we never acquired small companies because we killed them. It just, we just had no way to assume them. So we created a protection mechanism, a little organization that allows us to take in small companies, like we just bought a company called Vertica. And that company is about 50 people or something like that. Well, we don't want to destroy that company. We want to basically grow that company, and we need a way to do it. A lot of companies want to do that. They'll be challenged to do that. The pharmaceutical businesses, they have a real product problem. There's not enough drugs under development. They're going to have to buy a lot of companies. The automotive business is infamous for this. They'll get, I'm going to make a speech in Detroit next Tuesday about the industry and what do you do if you're sitting at GM or Chrysler? How are you going to compete when the world, they've competed in a world that hasn't changed for 50 years. Now they've got to compete in a world that's going to change as fast as the computer business. They're not ready to do that. They don't have the talent to do that. So they'll need talent. They'll need people that think more entrepreneurial. So I think you'll have a lot of choice. The thing is, don't get frustrated. If you feel like you went to a big company and you feel like nobody's listening, leave. Don't stay. Don't keep beating your head. If you have a great idea that you can't get anybody to fund, forget the idea. Go to another idea. Okay? I think the success is if you do something, not if you try to do something. Okay? And so you want to do something. Now, when do you give up on things? I mean, you can be. I told a story upstairs of an entrepreneur from WVU that he just doesn't give up. And I'll just beat him off and say, stop! Doesn't give up, and he's successful. He gets it done. And so, but I think that's the advice, is be true to, set yourself goals to say, I'm going to accomplish so much by the time I'm 25 or by the time I'm 30. And if you haven't, then rethink it. Rethink it. When Mike and I went to work in the 60s, we were thinking we're signing up for our life. We didn't know we'd ever leave a company. We didn't know how to leave a company. It's very different today, and you do want to tackle the world. get yourself a platform. Okay, so you either have to have a big idea or join somebody else's platform. You know, make a, Acquion. Okay, so here, Acquion is a company right here in Pittsburgh developing low-cost storage. Has wonderful technical talent, drafted from CMU. This is going to be a big company someday. You could decide to say, well, I want to go help that be a big company. You know, or I want to start further back and start my own company. But I think the good news is there's a lot of opportunity. Don't get stuck in one place, beating your head against the wall, because there's a lot of opportunity. And while you're young, you can try and fail and try and fail and try and fail. Doesn't matter. I mean, that's one difference in the U.S. is that you can try and fail and do it again.
If you are going to be an entrepreneur,
in Spain you can.
Right? If you're going to be an entrepreneur and you really have that DNA, then you have to accept the fact that that's a 24/7, 365 job. It's the one question I always ask potential entrepreneurs. I'll ask them a simple question. What did you do last night? Who did you have dinner with? And what did your kids and your wife talk about? And if they come up with any answer that tells me anything, I know they're not good entrepreneurs. That's the first thing.
Do we have anybody with a burning final question?
It's all in. We got one more we have to break up. You have one more question back there? Yeah.
Yes. I'm sure there's a million great ideas in this room, and I'd like to get your one thought on bridging the gap, short of venture capital. How does an entrepreneur bridge the gap between a good idea and execution? Because that's where everyone seems to fall short.
Go ask Dad for money. Rich uncle. I think you have to first of all develop a solid plan. I'm not, I look. You have the tools that you learn here to develop a plan, but the plan is not it. I rarely look at the business plan that's developed in the decks. I look at the team. Okay, so right away you can spot in the first 10 minutes a great team. And is this team the team that's going to pull it off? And I don't care whether you're going after angel capital or venture capital. The team is everything. So associate yourself with best of breed. Make sure you think it through. So if I'm good at business development, I need somebody who is a crack programmer. As you've all seen Social Network, okay? So they went to get a programmer. And they got screwed when they went to get the programmer, but they needed somebody that could do the program. Think about getting best in class. Don't compromise on the team at all. And then, do you have a way to test the market early? So if you have to work on your idea for 4 years before you're getting any market feedback, that's a bad plan. Okay? You need a lot of energy. There's a lot of energy companies that basically, that's what you have to do. But you need some way of getting market validation. That if I could build this and I could sell it for this cost, that the world would start changing and I could start getting market share.
Well, Ray, I know I speak for everybody here. Really, one more of this guy? Is there money?
No, I want
a great idea.
Real quick. 10-word question.
Well, there's a lot of buzz recently about crazy valuation in the technology space with Facebook, Groupon, all this. I just want to get your take. Is this really, are we experiencing another internet bubble?
Yeah, it's really, I got it. So it's real easy to conclude that this is an internet bubble. I can't tell you that it's not. But guess what? Every great industry today grew through bubbles. Okay, the energy business did, medical business did. Every great industry grew through booms and busts. When I came out of school, I wanted to be an aeronautical engineer. Boeing wasn't hiring. They were firing. Okay, so boom and bust, boom and bust. So this, I think, probably has a little boomish to it. The prices will come down at some point. But I do think there's a permanency here. The internet is mature. It is global. We like as human beings to work in our social networks. We've always had social networks. We're just simply taking them to the internet. Once you get that viral effect of your social networking, communicating through a smartphone, then everything becomes kind of social. You want to check everything out, socially. It's going to be more important than email. I was asked today, can I get to you on LinkedIn? Well, you're not getting to me on LinkedIn, okay? But there'll be a social network to get through to everybody, okay? So social network, mobile, so you've got to have there's going to be a lot more intelligence on these phones, and then it's going to be decidedly local. So it'll be brought down to the local level so that you can, get on your smartphone, get a coupon to get a discount at a restaurant you're going to take a date to tonight. So basically the world's going to work that way. And so, I think the value, who knows on valuations, it's all market dependent. But you can make a case that if you have 1 billion users on Facebook, yeah, it's worth $50 billion, $75 billion. Groupon, I think, is better. Groupon is delivering real value. They're bringing customers into establishments. That's a real value proposition. Are they worth $12 billion? You bet. Absolutely. That's a really important service. Twitter? Question. I don't know. We're a big investor in Twitter. We put $130 million into Twitter. And but I think they still need the business model. But Twitter's, obviously a lot of users.
Well, I wish we had 4 or 5 more hours, but we don't. So I know these guys have to get to class. I want everybody to join in a round of applause.